This video is going to use supply and demand diagrams to compare the effect of a tariff and a subsidy as methods of protecting domestic industries. If these diagrams are unclear, you should watch the videos which explain them on this channel. There's one named tariff and one named subsidy. We're going to first look at a tariff. A tariff is a tax on imported goods. The impact of this tax is that price increases from P1 to P2. And as a result of this, domestic supply increases from 0Q1 to 0Q2, and imports fall from Q1, Q4 down to Q2, Q3. And again, if that doesn't make sense, you should watch the tariff video where we go through that step by step. Some of the effects of this tariff are, firstly, for domestic producers, their revenue increases from A to A plus B plus E. So domestic producers gain the areas B and E, and that was the aim of the tariff, was to help those domestic producers to make more revenue. The overseas businesses used to get B plus C plus D as revenue, but now they only get C. So they've lost B and D. There is a new area on this diagram, which is F, and that is tax revenue that is collected by the government. A subsidy is a payment made to domestic industries to help them to produce more. In this diagram, the effect of the subsidy is to increase domestic supply from S1 to S2. As a result, domestic production increases from 0Q1 to 0Q3. Domestic revenue, which used to be at A, increases to A plus B. Imports were previously the distance from Q1 to Q2, but now imports are only from Q3 to Q2. The revenue that goes to those importing businesses, those overseas businesses, it used to be B plus C, but now it is just B. And once again, a subsidy has met the aim, which was to help the domestic producers, because now domestic producers have gained that area B as a result of the subsidy, which allowed them to increase their supply. And if you don't understand how that diagram works, you should watch the video about subsidy where we go through this step by step. We're now just going to compare these two tools of protectionist policy. So this was our tariff and this was our subsidy. With the tariff, there was an increase in the price level, and there was also a decrease in the total consumption. At P1, total consumption was here at Q4, but as a result of the increase in price, we have this new level of total consumption at Q3. So now domestic consumers have less products. They went from Q4 to Q3, and they pay a higher price. So overall, as a result of imposing tariffs, consumers pay higher price and they're able to consume less products, which decreases their standard of living. Under a subsidy, there isn't an increase in price and there isn't a decrease in quantity. So the tariff was able to increase business revenue. So it's an increased business revenue. The domestic businesses gain B plus E. In this diagram, they gain the area B, so both have the same goal being met. However, in this one, the effect on consumers isn't the same. Consumers aren't paying a higher price, and they're still having this access to the same amount of the product. Production remains at Q2, or demand remains at Q2, and so that's the amount of consumption that occurs. So the standard of living doesn't decrease in a subsidy. A subsidy, therefore, has two big advantages over a tariff. When you put a subsidy in place, prices don't increase and quantity doesn't fall. Whereas in a tariff, the price increases from P1 to P2 and quantity demanded falls from Q4 to Q3. So why is it that governments use tariffs then? And we do see tariffs used more often than subsidies. Well, the main reason is tied up in this area here, F. When a government imposes a tariff, they collect tax revenue. So they're able to protect the domestic industry and they get revenue out of the process. With a subsidy, however, the domestic producer is still benefited, but instead of the government receives no revenue, and in fact they have to spend money because they pay the subsidy to the domestic producers to help them to produce more products. So even though we can see in this diagram that the effect on consumers is that they are made worse off by a tariff, governments are receiving money, whereas in this model governments have to pay money. So therefore it is more likely that governments would prefer to use a tariff method rather than the subsidy method.